What would you do if you were the only person in a room full of hundreds who saw the danger coming? And what if everyone in that room had spent their whole lives looking right through you? The ballroom smelled like warm champagne and expensive cologne. 500 people in pressed suits and evening gowns faced the podium, their attention fixed on the woman in the white blazer stepping up to the microphone. Crystal chandeliers threw light across the marble floor in long, golden pools. Every camera in the room was pointed at Diane Ashford. Marcus Webb was not watching Diane Ashford's face. He was watching the room. The way he always did. The way a man who has cleaned other people's spaces for 20 years learns to watch. Not the center, the edges, the corners, the places nobody thinks to look. That was when he saw it. A small red dot, moving slowly across the white of her blazer, drifting toward the center of her chest. His body understood before his mind caught up. Marcus dropped the mop. It clattered against the marble, a sound that turned exactly 3 heads. His work boots hit the floor in 4 long strides, crossing the lobby at a speed that made a security guard reach for his radio. The crowd blurred. The chandelier above the podium shuddered, just slightly, barely visible, the rigging cable swaying wrong. He hit her at the shoulder, not hard, controlled, enough. Diane's speech cut off mid-breath. Marcus wrapped an arm around her and pulled her behind the solid oak of the podium just as the chandelier bracket gave way with a sound like a gunshot. 200 pounds of iron and crystal came down exactly where she had been standing. The impact shook the floor. Glass scattered 30 feet in every direction. Women screamed. Men stumbled backward. Someone's phone shattered under a running heel. Then the security guard's hand closed around the back of Marcus's collar. "Don't move!" The voice was close, tight, professional. "Nobody move!" Marcus didn't move. He stood completely still, breathing through his nose, the pine cleaner on his jacket mixing with the dust now rising from the wreckage. He could feel the eyes of 500 people landing on him. He could feel exactly what those eyes were seeing. A black man in a gray work jacket with a name tag slightly crooked, holding a billionaire from behind, surrounded by broken glass, while security swarmed. He knew this moment. He knew it the way he knew the weight of a mop and the particular silence of a school hallway before dawn. He had been invisible his entire life. He was very visible now. His hands were open, fingers spread wide. He did not resist. He did not explain. He just waited, steady, quiet, certain, for the truth to catch up to the image. It would. It always did. The question was only how long. But that's not how the night was supposed to go. Before we get back to that lobby, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. And if stories like this one stay with you, make sure you're subscribed. We're here every week. The fun is just beginning. Tell us what city you're from in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. The tension is rising. Who's watching from where? Like and subscribe to the channel. More to come. Tell us in the comments who's from which country, and give us a like and subscribe. The plot thickens. Let's check our geography. Tell us where you are now. Give the video a thumbs up and subscribe. We're just warming up. Tell us where you're watching from. Give the video a like and hit the subscribe button. The climax is near. Share where you're from, like, and be sure to subscribe. Events are unfolding rapidly. Write your city in the chat, give it a like, and subscribe so you don't get lost. The juiciest part is yet to come. Let's get started. Get to know each other. Where are you from? Like and subscribe right now. The suspense is building. Tell us where you're watching this episode from, and reward us with a like and a subscribe. The excitement is running high. Tell us what city you're from now. Give us a big like and subscribe to the channel. 6 weeks earlier, Marcus Webb was on his knees in the hallway outside room 7B, scrubbing a scuff mark off the baseboard that nobody would ever notice. It was 5:52 in the morning. The school smelled like floor wax and yesterday's lunch, a particular combination that had soaked into the walls so deeply it was practically structural. The fluorescent lights above him buzzed and flickered in their usual rhythm, casting long shadows down an empty corridor. He didn't mind the quiet. He had learned to live inside it. Marcus was 47 years old, broad-shouldered, with hands that had been rough since his 20s. He wore the same gray work jacket every shift, the one with the name tag slightly crooked, no matter how many times he straightened it. There was a small tear on the left cuff he kept meaning to sew. He hadn't yet. By 6:15, he had emptied 21 classrooms. By 7:30, all 34. The first bell rang as he was rinsing his mop bucket in the utility sink, and the hallways filled with noise the way a river fills after rain. Sudden, total, unstoppable. Teachers walked past him with coffee cups and folders. Most of them nodded. A few said his name. He knew all of theirs. That evening, he found a note on the refrigerator door, held up by a magnet shaped like a pineapple. "Soup's in the pot. Don't forget to eat. Love, the better Webb." Marcus stood in the kitchen doorway in his jacket, still smelling like pine cleaner, and read it twice. A small pot sat on the stove, chicken and rice, slightly overcooked the way Cora always made it. The kitchen window faced a brick wall, but on the sill sat a small pot of basil, green and stubborn, catching the last thin light of the afternoon. Ruth had grown basil every summer. Marcus had kept one plant going for 4 years. Cora appeared from behind the curtain that divided the apartment, the curtain Marcus had hung himself when she turned 11 and needed a door. She was 14 now, wearing an oversized hoodie that had belonged to her mother, the sleeves pulled down over her hands. "You're doing the motel tonight?" she asked. 3 to 11. "I have a thing due Thursday, history." "How far along?" She held up her thumb and index finger about an inch apart. "Cora." "I know, Dad. I know." She disappeared back behind the curtain. A moment later, "The soup needs salt." He added salt. He ate standing at the counter because sitting felt like stopping, and stopping felt like something he couldn't afford. His school salary covered rent and groceries and utilities with almost nothing left over. The motel job, 3 nights a week at $11 an hour, covered the rest. Cora's school trip to Washington, D.C. cost $380. He had $214 saved in a jar on the top shelf of the closet behind the extra blankets. He finished the soup, rinsed the bowl, pulled on his jacket. The tear on the left cuff caught the light as he reached for his keys. He let the door close quietly behind him. She arrived on a Tuesday. Room 14. Cash for 2 weeks, paid in advance at the front desk, while Marcus was changing a burnt bulb in the hallway outside room 9. He heard the desk clerk, a young man named Pete, mention it to the night manager in the break room afterward. 2 weeks, cash. Who does that? Someone who doesn't want a paper trail, the manager said, and then laughed like it was a joke. Marcus didn't laugh. He filed it away the way he filed everything, quietly, in the back of his mind, behind more immediate things. The call to fix the heating vent in room 14 came at 11 p.m. Marcus knocked twice, the way he always did. The door opened almost immediately, and the smell hit him first. Not the usual motel soap and stale air, but something sharper. Real perfume. The kind that costs more than his weekly grocery run. Diane Ashford did not look at him. She was on the phone, her voice low and clipped, one hand pressed flat against the window glass, like she was steadying herself. She wore a charcoal blazer over a silk blouse, both slightly wrinkled in the way that meant she'd been wearing them since morning. She pointed at the vent near the baseboard without breaking her sentence. "The projection is wrong, Gerald. Run it again. I don't care what time it is." Marcus crouched by the vent. He worked quietly, the way he always did. Screwdriver, panel off, filter cleared, panel back. 2 minutes, maybe 3. He was good at disappearing into a task, but his eyes moved the way they always moved. On the chair by the window, a small backpack covered in train stickers, the kind a child collects one at a time over years. On the mirror above the dresser, a crayon drawing taped carefully at all 4 corners. Trains on a blue background, the lines wobbly and confident the way a young child's lines always are. On the nightstand, a hospital visitor's badge, the kind printed fresh each morning, with a room number written in blue marker. Room 412, Children's Wing. Marcus replaced the panel. He stood. He picked up his tools. Diane was still on the phone. Quote, 12. Quote, he moved toward the door. Quote, 13. Quote. She still wasn't looking at him. "Yes, ma'am." She nodded once, the way people nod at furniture that has done what furniture is supposed to do. Marcus stepped into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind him. He stood there for a moment in the corridor, the smell of her perfume fading into the usual motel air, carpet cleaner and old wood, and the distant hum of the ice machine at the end of the hall. He thought about the visitor's badge, the room number, the backpack with the train stickers, sitting on a chair like it was waiting for someone to come back and claim it. He thought about the drawing on the mirror, all those careful, crooked trains. And then he picked up his toolbox and walked back to the supply closet, because that was the job, and the job was what he had. The second week settled into a pattern Marcus recognized without naming it. Every night around midnight, he would hear heels on the exterior walkway, a precise, measured sound, like someone who had trained herself not to drag her feet even when she was exhausted. He would look up from whatever he was doing. Diane would pass the break room window carrying a paper cup of hospital coffee, the kind that comes from a vending machine and tastes like hot brown water. She never looked in. He never waved. That was the whole of it, and somehow it was enough to notice. Thursday of the second week. Cora showed up at the motel lobby at 9:30 at night, her backpack over one shoulder, her cracked phone screen glowing in her hand. Quote 15. Quote, she said to Pete at the front desk. Quote 16. Quote, Pete called Marcus on the radio. Marcus was 2 buildings over fixing a dripping faucet. He said he'd be there in 10 minutes. Cora sat in one of the lobby chairs, orange vinyl, slightly sticky, and pulled out her homework. She had been there maybe 4 minutes when the front door opened and Diane walked in, still in the blazer, hospital coffee in hand, her eyes already aimed at the elevator. "You're here late," Cora said. Diane stopped. She looked at the girl the way people look at something unexpected, a bird inside a building. "I could say the same. Forgot my key. My dad works here nights." Cora tilted her head. "You're in room 14. He fixed your vent." Something shifted in Diane's expression. Not warmth exactly, more like recalibration. Quote 21, quote 22. Cora glanced at Diane's cup. "That coffee is terrible, by the way. The machine in the lobby makes it worse than the one at the hospital." Diane looked down at the cup. "You've had it?" "My mom was sick for a while. I know hospital coffee." She said it the way teenagers say hard things, flat, matter of fact, like the words have been worn smooth from handling. "What floor is he on? The kid you visit?" Diane went very still. "The badge on your nightstand," Cora said simply. "My dad noticed. He notices everything. He just doesn't say anything about it." A long pause. The elevator hummed somewhere above them. "4th floor," Diane said finally. "His name is Noah." "How old?" 9. Cora nodded slowly, the way her father nodded, like she was filing something away. Does he like anything while he's in there? Diane's jaw moved. She wrapped both hands around the paper cup. __, quote _ 34, __. Cora's eyes lit up with the particular enthusiasm of someone who has just found a project. She pulled out her phone, cracked screen, pineapple case, and started typing. That was how Marcus found them 10 minutes later. Cora cross-legged on the orange vinyl chair, phone in both hands, reading train routes aloud. Diane Ashford sitting across from her, the terrible coffee forgotten on the table, listening like she hadn't heard anything good in a very long time. The radiator in room 14 failed on a Wednesday night during the first hard, cold snap of the season. Marcus got the call at 1 a.m. He pulled on his jacket, grabbed his tools, and walked the exterior corridor with his breath making small clouds in the frozen air. He knocked. Diane opened the door almost immediately, still fully dressed, the charcoal blazer now its third consecutive day. Behind her, the room was different. The chair had been pushed against the wall to make space. A narrow hospital-style bed had been wheeled in. Marcus recognized the frame, the adjustable rail, the particular institutional weight of it. The crayon drawing was still taped to the mirror. Beside it now, a second one. More trains. Longer, more detailed. The hand that drew it was getting stronger. Marcus crouched by the radiator. He worked. The room was very quiet except for the sound of shallow, even breathing from the bed. He heard it before he saw it. A small cough, soft, careful, like someone trying not to be heard. He didn't look up. He kept his hands moving. Then Diane's voice came from the floor. He turned. She was sitting on the carpet beside the bed, back against the frame, still in her blazer, her son's hand held in both of hers. She was whispering something too low to hear. Her eyes were closed. Noah's were too. Marcus finished the repair. He stood slowly. He went to the break room. He didn't think about it as a decision. He just went. He kept a small hot plate in his locker and a few cans of soup, a habit from years of long school nights when Cora needed something warm waiting. He opened a can of chicken broth, added the last of a sleeve of crackers he'd been working through, and heated it until steam rose in thin curls. He found a clean mug. He carried it to room 14 and knocked lightly. A long pause. Then the door opened. Diane stood in the doorway. Her hair, usually perfect, had slipped loose on one side. Her eyes moved from Marcus's face to the mug in his hand. She didn't speak. Quote, 35. Quote, he said. Quote, 36. Quote. She looked at it for a moment, the way people look at something they haven't allowed themselves to want. You didn't have to do that. I know. She took the mug, wrapped both hands around it, didn't drink, just held it, the way you hold something warm when you've been cold for so long, you've forgotten what warm feels like. From inside the room, a small voice, quote, 39. She turned, quote, 40. A pause, then, quote, 41. Diane looked at Marcus. Something moved across her face. Not quite permission, not quite a question. Marcus leaned slightly into the doorway. Quote, 42, he said quietly. Another pause. Then, quote, 43. A rustling of blankets. Quote, 44. Diane turned back to Marcus. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked down at the mug. Quote, 45, she said, finally. It came out like something she'd had to find the edges of first. Marcus nodded once. He walked back down the corridor alone. 3 days later, Noah came home to the motel for the weekend. Marcus heard him before he saw him. A small, clear voice in the corridor explaining to Diane the precise difference between a high-speed rail line and an intercity express, with the patient confidence of someone who has never once considered that his audience might not care. Marcus was replacing a light fixture 2 doors down. He kept his eyes on his work. "Mom, did you know the Shinkansen in Japan runs on time to within 6 seconds? 6 seconds, for the whole year." "I did not know that." Diane's voice was different out here in the open air, slightly softer, like a door opened just a crack. Quote, 48. Quote, Noah said. The footsteps stopped. Quote, 49. A pause. Then Diane. Quote, 50. Marcus looked up. Noah Ashford was small for 9, pale, with dark eyes too large for his face, and the kind of careful posture that comes from spending months in a bed. He wore train-patterned pajamas under a heavy coat, and he was carrying a folded paper map the size of a placemat. Quote, 51. Quote, Noah asked. Marcus considered this. Quote, 52. Quote, Noah processed this with great seriousness. Quote, 53. He held up the map. Quote, 54. Quote, 55. Quote, 56. He refolded the map along its original creases with practiced precision. Marcus glanced at Diane. Her expression was unreadable. He said. Noah nodded, satisfied, and followed his mother inside. That evening, Marcus found Diane in the break room. She was standing at the counter staring at the instant coffee packets with the focused blankness of someone who has run out of thoughts. The fluorescent light above buzzed at its usual low frequency. The room smelled like burnt coffee and microwave plastic. Marcus reached past her and got the French press from his locker. She watched him without speaking while he measured the grounds. Diane said. Her voice was level, controlled. The voice she used for board calls and quarterly reports. She stopped. Her fingers pressed flat against the counter edge. The coffee press sat between them, steaming. Quote, 62, she said. Quote, 63, quote, 64. Marcus said. Quote, 65, quote, 66. He paused. Quote, 67. Diane was quiet for a long moment. She wrapped her hands around the mug he slid toward her. Diane said quietly. Marcus said nothing. He drank his coffee. Outside, the cold pressed against the break room's single small window, and the light above them buzzed on and on into the night. Cora found the article on a Friday morning before school. She was eating cereal at the kitchen counter, her cracked phone propped against the sugar bowl, when the headline loaded on her screen. She read it twice. Then she set down her spoon very carefully and read it a third time. Ashford Hospitality. CEO spotted at budget motel. Company in crisis. Beneath it, a photo taken from a distance. Diane in the parking lot, blazer, paper cup, looking at her phone. The article used words like erratic and unconfirmed sources close to the board. It mentioned a series of incidents at Diane's recent public appearances. A microphone failure, a car with a slow leak, small things that the writer called __. Quote _72__ Cora texted her father. No answer. He was already at the school, emptying classrooms. She left for school with the article still open on her phone. Marcus saw it at noon, on his break, sitting on an overturned bucket in the supply closet with a turkey sandwich. He read it slowly. Then he sat for a moment, looking at the brick wall visible through the small window above the mop sink. A pattern. Small incidents, easy to dismiss one at a time. He thought about the way Diane held her phone during board calls, both hands, white-knuckled, like she was keeping something from flying apart. He thought about the careful, controlled way she moved through the motel corridors, always watching the edges of things. He thought, she already knows. That night at the motel, he found her in the parking lot at 11:30, standing beside her rental car in the cold, her phone pressed to her ear. Her breath came out in sharp white clouds. Her free hand was pressed flat against the car roof. Quote, 73. Quote, a pause. Her jaw tightened. Quote, 74. She ended the call, turned, saw Marcus. Neither of them spoke for a moment. The parking lot lights hummed above them. Somewhere down the street, a truck rumbled past. Marcus said. She looked at the phone in her hand. She said it without inflection, the way she said large numbers, like she had already made peace with the weight of it. She stopped. Marcus said. Her voice stayed level. Quote, 83, quote, 84. She looked at him. Quote, 85, quote, 86, he said. Quote, 87. She was quiet for a long moment. The cold settled around them both. Quote, 88, she said. Quote, 89. Marcus looked at her steadily. Quote, 90, he said. Quote, 91. She went. The night before the corporate event, Marcus sat at the kitchen counter at midnight with a needle and thread and the gray work jacket laid flat in front of him. The tear on the left cuff had been there for months. He had walked past it every morning, told himself he'd get to it, and never had. He got to it now. The apartment was quiet. Behind the curtain, Cora was asleep. The basil on the windowsill caught the light from the street below, its small leaves dark and still. Marcus stitched slowly, the way he did everything, without rushing, without waste. His phone buzzed. A text from Diane. The event is tomorrow. Grand Meridian Hotel. I've been asked to speak at the closing session. Gerald confirmed the rigging team for the main hall. Same company that did the charity gala where the microphone failed. He read it twice. Then he set the phone down and finished the last stitch. He had been called in to cover maintenance at the Grand Meridian for the event. A favor to the regular crew. Extra hours. Nothing unusual. He had said yes 2 weeks ago without knowing Diane would be there. Now he sat with that coincidence and turned it over in his mind like a stone, looking at all its sides. In the morning, Cora was up before him, which never happened. She was standing in the kitchen in her mother's oversized hoodie, pouring coffee she didn't drink, watching him button the jacket. Quote, 92? Quote, she said. Quote, 93. Quote, she looked at him for a long moment. Quote, 94. Quote, quote, 95. Quote, quote, 96. Quote, he didn't answer. He picked up his keys. Dad. Cora's voice was quieter now. She set down the mug. Quote, 98. She stopped, pulled the hoodie sleeves down over her hands, the way she always did when she was choosing her words carefully. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 99, underscore, underscore. Marcus looked at his daughter, 14 years old, standing in her dead mother's hoodie, trying to give him permission for something he hadn't admitted he wanted. Quote, 100. Quote, he said. Quote, 101, quote. She picked up the mug again. Quote, 100. 2. Quote, he left. The Grand Meridian lobby smelled like fresh flowers and climate-controlled air, the kind of clean that costs money to maintain. Marcus checked in with the facilities manager, got his assignment, and spent the first 2 hours of the event moving through the edges of the room the way he always did. Checking, adjusting, invisible. He saw Diane arrive at 7:15, white blazer, hair perfect, posture like a closed door. She crossed the lobby without looking left or right, shaking hands, answering questions, performing the version of herself the room required. She didn't see him. He didn't expect her to. He went back to watching the room, the edges, the corners, the places nobody thinks to look. His jacket cuff was neatly sewn. His hands were steady. He was ready for an ordinary night. Then he saw the red dot. The security guard's hand stayed on Marcus's collar for 47 minutes. He counted. Not because he was angry, because counting was something to do while he stood completely still in the service corridor, hands open, fingers spread, waiting for the truth to move at its own pace. The corridor smelled like concrete and cleaning solution. A paper cup of water sat on the floor beside him. Someone had brought it without being asked. He didn't know who. Through the door, he could hear the ballroom, voices, movement, the particular controlled chaos of 500 people processing something they didn't expect. The guard's radio crackled. A voice said, "Stand down. Release him." The hand left his collar. Diane appeared in the service corridor doorway 2 minutes later. Her white blazer had a long gray smudge across the left shoulder from the podium. Her hair had come loose on one side. She looked at Marcus the way you look at something you almost lost before you knew you needed it. She didn't say anything in front of the guards. She just looked at him, and he looked back, and that was its own kind of conversation. Quote, 104-1 of the guards started. Quote, 105, quote, 106. She didn't look away from Marcus. "Give us a minute." The guards stepped back. The corridor went quiet, except for the distant hum of the ballroom beyond the door. "Are you hurt?" she asked. "No." "The rigging cable was cut," she said. Her voice was level, precise, the board call voice. But her hands, hanging at her sides, were not steady. "Not frayed. Cut. They confirmed it 10 minutes ago." Marcus nodded slowly. "Gerald," he said. Her jaw tightened. "Gerald. He was the one who confirmed the rigging crew." "Yes." She pressed her lips together. "He stood to take my position if the board voted me out. He had 11 days, and he ran out of patience." She said it without drama, like she was reading a report. But her left hand had found the wall beside her, fingers pressed flat against the plaster, holding something in. "Diane." Marcus said her name for the first time, just that. Her breath caught. One small, involuntary sound. "It's over," he said. "The part where you hold it all by yourself, that part's done." She looked at the floor, then at the smudge on her blazer, then at him. Really at him, the way she hadn't let herself look at anyone in a very long time. Quote, 120, quote, she said quietly. Quote, 121. Quote. From somewhere in his jacket pocket, his phone buzzed. He already knew who it was. He pulled it out. Cora's name on the cracked screen, a voicemail sent 20 minutes ago. He played it on speaker, low. "Dad, I saw the news. Are you okay? You didn't have to do that." A pause. The sound of a school hallway in the background. "But also, I'm really proud of you. Don't tell anyone I said that." The corridor was very quiet. Diane looked at the phone, then at Marcus. Something moved across her face, slow, like ice breaking in early spring. "She's something," Diane said. "She really is," Marcus agreed. 6 months later, the kitchen smelled like pancakes and maple syrup and the particular warmth of a Sunday morning that has nowhere to be. Noah sat at the kitchen table in his train-patterned pajamas, the same pair, freshly washed, that he had worn through the hardest months, with a large folded map spread across half the surface, explaining to no one in particular the most efficient rail route from Vienna to Budapest. His color had come back. His voice had the easy confidence of a boy who had been told, recently and repeatedly, that he was going to be fine. Cora sat across from him with her homework open, pretending not to listen. She was failing at it. Every 30 seconds she glanced at the map. "You already know this part," Noah said without looking up. "I'm studying. You're listening to me. Those aren't mutually exclusive." She turned a page. "Keep going. What's after Gaior?" Noah smiled and kept going. Diane stood at the stove holding a spatula with the careful uncertainty of someone operating unfamiliar equipment. She had restructured Ashford Hospitality's board in the weeks after the Grand Meridian. Gerald's quiet departure had made the news briefly, then faded. What remained was a company that was still standing, still hers, now with a community partnership division focused on facilities and workforce development, an idea that had come from a conversation in a motel break room over French press coffee. Marcus consulted on the standards, not because she had invented a role for him, because he knew things she needed to know, and she had finally learned to listen. He came up behind her now and took the spatula from her hand. "You're allowed," he said quietly. She didn't ask how he knew what she was thinking. She just stepped aside and let him work, and stood close enough that their shoulders almost touched. __, quote _132 ____. Noah asked from the table. He was still looking at his map. The question came out the same way he delivered train facts, direct, curious, without self-consciousness. The kitchen went quiet except for the sizzle of batter hitting the pan. Cora looked up from her homework. She looked at Noah, then at her father, then at Diane. She chewed the end of her pen. Quote, 133. Quote, she said finally. Quote, 134 quote. Noah considered this with great seriousness. Quote, 135. Quote. He went back to his map. On the windowsill, the basil sat in its usual pot, 4 years old, still green, still stubborn. Beside it, a second pot, rosemary. Diane had brought it 3 weeks ago, setting it down without explanation. Marcus had looked at it for a long moment and then moved it into the light. He looked at it now. The two plants side by side, different and growing. He thought about Ruth. He thought about how she always said the apartment was too quiet, that a home needed noise, and people taking up space, and someone always explaining something nobody asked to have explained. The map rustled. Noah turned to a new page. Marcus flipped the pancakes. Cora stole a piece of Noah's map corner to use as a bookmark. Diane poured coffee into 4 mismatched mugs without being asked. Nobody said anything. Nobody needed to. If this story moved you, like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments, would you have moved first?